Hey everybody, what is going on? I am Maximus Rex and this is Big Baby Reviews. Check out my comics, Big Baby and STARCRASHER at KingComics.CA. Today guys, it is Jack Kirby Day and we're taking a look at Superman's Pal, the new Jimmy Olsen issue number 142, cover dated October 1971. So I've talked about before of kind of the core concepts of each of the books in the Fourth World Saga, and Jimmy Olsen, while not officially, I think, part of the Fourth World Saga, it pretty much is, even though it doesn't literally ever, I don't think ever crosses over with any of the other characters, you know, as Mr. Miracle is obviously referred to in New Gods. The Forever People are definitely connected to New Genesis, right? And I've mentioned also how Jimmy Olsen is basically, I feel like Jack Kirby's title to have fun with, to just try kooky ideas and off-the-wall ideas, and some of them stick and some of them not so much, but there's some really interesting concepts, and there have been in this book from the very beginning, which, like I said, just concept-wise are strong enough to kind of stand next to some of the stuff, at least visually, that he's doing in New Gods. You know, the Mountain of Judgment, you know, while not specifically tied to the New Gods and New Genesis or even Apocalypse or any of those concepts, just kind of fits well aesthetically together with it, I guess is how I'd put it. But anyways, getting ahead of myself. So in this issue, what's the kooky concept that we're going to be taking a look at? A little bit better than Goody Rickles, which we saw a few issues ago. That one, I'm not so sure. Kind of dated, obviously, right? The Don Rickles kind of appearance in a comic book. But this one basically takes some of the movie monsters from the, I guess, since back in the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, right? The classic kind of movie monsters, takes two of them and throws them into the storyline here. You've got basically the werewolf and Dracula, right? But I don't think they can actually call him Dracula or something. Maybe at this point you can, right? The rights on Dracula have kind of run out. But it's kind of Jack Kirby's play on it, and there's some stuff about it that I like as far as the character, and some stuff that I don't like quite as much. The design is very inconsistent through this issue. Now, it's a two-parter. He's going to be in the next issue 143 as well. So hopefully there's a bit of consistency, excuse me, always have trouble with that word, that's built up. But like the design of the character in this book, if I'm basing it just on the cover, I don't like it that much, right? But then there's shots on the inside, and I'll point them out as we go through the book, that I think he looks really cool. So he would just have to settle on some of these design elements, and I'd probably enjoy it a bit more. One, this might be just the colorist's fault, but making his lips super bright red here just makes him look like he's wearing lipstick, so not enjoying that so much. Feels like he's kind of looking at, I'm not sure if the Hammer horror films were out by now, late 60s, early 70s maybe, but yeah, he's basing it a lot on stuff he's seen in movies, The Werewolf as well, right? Like it's the inspiration is definitely coming from there and not so much from his own imagination, I feel like. And that's what I mean when we look at the inside. Some of it's derivative, but then there's other instances where I think it's really cool. So on the cover here, the werewolf, you know, his posture definitely, his anatomy is definitely different than most of the werewolf men we've seen in movies, right? But the face is fairly reminiscent of stuff we've seen in movies. So, and again, throughout this issue, we're going to have a Superman and Jimmy Olsen redrawn by the team drawing the actual Superman books, mostly Kurt Swan, I think, and Murphy Anderson. These are the names I've heard that were doing this. And that's kind of unfortunate. But here on the cover, I feel like they got it here, and I feel like that's Neil Adams inking the Superman stuff here. And I think I've read that. I'm pretty sure on that. I've read that somewhere. And giving him that Superman look here on the cover. But then, for some reason, Jimmy Olsen was left alone. Now, is that Neil Adams, you know, kind of playing a trick on DC? Okay, I'll fix up Superman for you guys, but not, you know, I'll leave Jimmy Olsen as he is. Or, oops, I forgot. Or, you know what I mean? Maybe word didn't get through. It was more important that Superman be altered than Jimmy Olsen. So, you know, paths were crossed a little bit in the communication there. I don't know exactly what happened, but this definitely looks like a Kirby Jimmy Olsen, which is fine to me and is what Jimmy Olsen should have looked like all throughout this series. But unfortunately, DC chose to redraw his face. And something interesting kind of in the Dracula design here, how the cape is almost, you know, not so much a cape, but part of his body and a bit amorphous. There's some weird stuff going on down here with his legs. Adds to that weird off-kilter, off-putting kind of vibe that Kirby has in the 70s that I really like. But yeah, the Beatles type haircut, right, kind of works later on. Anyways, I'll open up the book. We'll have a look at it. So here's our first shot of our two characters here, the werewolf and Dracula. But they don't call him that, right? They call him the man from Transylvania, not Transylvania. So I guess they're trying to avoid some sort of rights issues, or at least it feels that way. So the way he's designed here, they've done the red lips again, but for some reason I find it works better. Maybe because we don't get quite the indication of that kind of weird mustache thing he's got going on, at least on the cover. Let's look back at that, right? That Kirby thing where, you know, is it a mustache? Is it painted on? We're not quite sure, right? It's very angular. I like how he looks here with the bigger eyes and the yellow color inside. Makes him kind of creepy and stuff. I think he looks cool here. And even the costume design here seems a little bit different from what we get on the cover, right? As far as this here. Here it looks much more like a costume and maybe slightly superhero-y, I guess is how I'd put it. But here it almost looks like a weird 70s, you know, shirt you'd wear to your prom or something. I don't like it here. And kind of a different spin on the fact that Dracula bites his victims, right? Here he just shoots some rays out of his eyes, which is funny. They go into like opposite directions. I guess he's like wall-eyed left to right or something. That's just obviously for visual effect, right? And then the rays basically kind of, I guess, like lasers burn into the victim's neck, and that's how he bites them. Not literally biting them. Probably something to do with the comics code at that time in the early 70s. It was still pretty strict. You know, those horror books that started coming out maybe just a couple of years after this is when the comics code relaxed a little bit and they could do a bit more horror kind of elements in comic books. So this is Jack Kirby trying to keep it PG and under the rules of the comics code. So the next day, Superman and Jimmy Olsen, badly shat over by the DC editorial team and redrawn to look like it's 1955 again, are in the office of the lady that we saw sleeping here, who is their boss's secretary, basically, right? And right away you get kind of a hint. I was looking at this and I was like, oh, she looks a little odd. And I noticed the eyebrows, right? Kirby, when he wants to do those kind of wild eyebrows, he adds like little flicks of tufts of the eyebrows sticking up and make her look a little bit more kind of menacing and slightly animal-like, I guess. And what he's hinting at, as we look at this panel here, hinting, maybe not so much the word I should be using, make it fairly obvious here with the teeth that there's something going on there and we're not quite sure. We know because now we realize she's the lady who was bit by the man from Transylvania last night. Some of the dialogue here I thought is funny from Jack Kirby. So Jimmy Olsen, oh man, it's just kills me how much this stands out as not being Jack Kirby. These pages here just suffer from the fact that, you know, the only character drawn by Jack Kirby literally is her, and everything else being redrawn just sucks. So Jimmy Olsen says, Miss Conway, your face, I mean, are you okay? And Superman, well, Clark Kent says, one side, diplomat. Don't you see she needs help? So there's something funny about that dialogue that Superman's like being like, stop being such a diplomat about her looking like shit, basically, is what he's saying. So Superman, as she passes out here, he kind of grabs her because she's not feeling well. And looking in the mirror here, that's where they realize that, I guess, you know, knowing the old vampire lore, that she's a vampire, right? And as they're kind of, you know, trying to figure out what to do here, boom, we got the bat coming in. And of course, the shadow here means the bat's turned into our friend here, the Count Dragarin of Transylvania. So not Dracula, Dragarin. And again, the Beatles kind of haircut here, his look here, where, you know, again, so inconsistent. Is that the mustache again? Or is that just, you know, little folds in his skin because of his smile here? It almost looks like he's got no facial hair here. So it's almost like I wish Kirby would just kind of decide exactly what this character's design is. But, you know, I don't even know if he, you know, designed him off somewhere in a sketchbook or something before starting this issue. I feel like he just drew him on the cover and then kept going, right? He designed him on the cover. And even he's not quite sure right now exactly what he's supposed to look like. I'll skip over a lot of these pages where it's very kind of Superman Jimmy centric, just because it's not drawn by Kirby and it kind of sucks. Here he hits him with some sort of ray here. Behold the evil eye, gentlemen. It's not a myth, for in it is the power, and in the power there's irresistible force. So hits them both with that, and then we go back to the Newsboy Legion that we haven't seen in a bunch of issues, and this is kind of fun and refreshing just because all the characters are drawn by Jack Kirby. Jack Kirby kind of doing, again, the second version of the Newsboy Legion. There's a bit more cartooniness in their faces that I really enjoy. Still drawing some cool vehicles for them, right? Kirby always really adept at drawing those interesting, awesome vehicles all throughout these books. and Flippadippa, I think is his name, trying to basically find a way out for the Newsboy Legion. So they've been stuck there for many issues. It's almost like Kirby, you know, forgot about them and left that storyline kind of lagging, and then maybe he was reminded, oh, okay, I'll throw in about, you know, a page and a half here to move them along in the story, even though all he's really said is they're stuck and now they need to find a way out, right? So back in their boss's, Morgan Edge is his name. I forgot earlier. In Morgan Edge's office here, or at least in the secretary's office, I'm not quite sure. The man from Transylvania once again. Look at this amazing, like, you know, you could interpret this as like this guy has a small arm coming out of his head in the way that it's foreshortened here, but I really like it. It's kind of extreme and really Kirby pushing it with the foreshortening of this arm. And, you know, is this one of Kirby's big head characters like MODOK or something with a small arm? But it's fun. It's kind of off kilter, once again, a little bit weird. So are these, again, indications of mustache or mouth folds or what's going on there? I'm not quite sure. It does slowly feel like he's starting to master the design here. And I guess the mustache is becoming part of it. I almost feel like he looks a little bit better without it. Like when you kind of see it here, right? And here he's got shadow or a goatee. Like that's what I mean. So inconsistent. What is it? Sometimes you're not even sure. Is it a shadow? Is it a mustache? Here again, you know, it's kind of ambiguous. And when it looks like he doesn't have facial hair, I feel the design is just a little bit better. Something fun about the coloring here, the kind of dark green, almost monochromatic that they're using for this darkened room. That's very 70s, but I kind of like. You can see the dot pattern, right? Very vintage. Yeah, something just, again, creepy and off kilter. This is kind of incidentally funny because, you know, Clark Kent jumps at the man from Transylvania, but of course he disappears in a puff of smoke. And from this angle, we see Clark Kent falling over and, you know, it kind of looks like he's farting. Even the sound effect would kind of work. So Superman and Jimmy Olsen, well, Clark Kent and Jimmy Olsen, because of course Jimmy Olsen still doesn't know Clark Kent is Superman, are off to the Science Research Center that hasn't been used since the booming 50s, where they would recreate, what does it say here? Reproduce the atmosphere of Mars right here on Earth. So there's a link to another planet here that's going to become more obvious as we get to the end of the story, but it's kind of an odd segue from the office to here for them all of a sudden being off to a research center. It's not quite clear why, but again, it will become clear a little bit later. And I was just reminded, I'm going to go back real quick because this is just a quick little thing that I thought was pretty funny and I should have mentioned. In the introduction here, right? This is what Kirby writes. I'll read it to you because it culminates in this funny bit here. What has been done is now done. The result of it will rival the most awesome event ever recorded. When Laura Conway takes up the threads of her life the next day at the offices of Galaxy Broadcasting System, her transformation is not ignored by, and of course, the namesake of the book, Jimmy Olsen and his supersonic sidekick, Superman. See her in his other identity. Seen here, rather, in his other identity, Clark Kent. So I just think it's funny that Kirby's introducing Superman as Jimmy Olsen's sidekick. That's a nice kind of flip there. Back to the research center as they kind of open it up. Boom! You know, the Wolfman appears. I was calling him a werewolf, but the Wolfman. And this definitely, again, almost where Kirby's kind of starting off with his character and his design. You know, he drew him on the cover. I don't know if the cover comes first or last. Probably last. Actually, I say that. I don't know for sure. But this, to me, definitely feels like a lot of the stuff we saw in movies. What's going to be different, though, already the design kind of changes. Now he starts to look a little bit more like the Beast from Beauty and the Beast in the 1930s French film, the black and white film. If you haven't seen that, you should check that out if you're open to old movies. Very cool movie. You'll see where Beauty and the Beast, the 90s animated version, stole all of its ideas. So thankfully the werewolf has some curvy flourishes here with the costume elements and the design, which I really like. And I like his body language, the way he's kind of always crunched over and very animalistic. And the proportions as well, just kind of brutish and almost bear-like, I guess is how I describe it. Great, you know, extra exaggerated foreshortened shot by Kirby, ruined by a DC office Jimmy Olsen face. This shot of Jimmy Olsen here is pretty funny. Right? The wide gate there, definitely running fast to get away from the werewolf. And yeah, these shots of him jumping around and this foreshortened shot of him running on the ground is very cool. The design of the toes here, a little bit unfortunate. Don't want to get weird, but it almost could look like 3 uncircumcised penises. Yeah, got weird. And we're back to the man from Transylvania. and some interesting kind of visual effects that Kirby's using to give him kind of that mystic vibe that I really like. The eyes, once again, on Superman and Jimmy Olsen. Basically, he comes in to save the werewolf, the wolf man. Again, these pages, you know, with the redrawn faces, I'm going to move on pretty quickly because it just annoys the heck out of me. Flip-a-Dip found an exit, so with our B story with the Newsboy Legion, they are slowly making their way out. Where they're going to end up, we're not quite sure. And into a room where a gentleman claims to have shot and killed Jim Harper, who is the original Guardian, right? Who the new Guardian is cloned from, and definitely a connection, a deep connection to the Newsboy Legion. So once again, Kirby giving us a little bit of B storyline to what we're going to be seeing next. Hopefully, if he doesn't forget. And this last sequence here, for some reason, once again, they know that the man from Transylvania will be at the cemetery here, so they kind of track him and follow him. And once we get over here, one last kind of cool, weird, strange Kirby concept before he leaves us with this issue. This is the kind of stuff I love from Kirby. So as they walk down into this tomb here, they discover a small planet. Welcome to Transylvania, Jimmy. So again, I don't know exactly how this works. We're going to find out next issue when I review that one. But this is a small planet, and for some reason, these look like cameras, right? Just kind of drone, floaty cameras filming the whole thing. Why? I'm not quite sure. Just one of those great images that Kirby throws in there that makes you question, wonder, leads your imagination. You don't just look at it, you start to extrapolate from it. And what are the possible consequences and things that are going to be involved with this small planet? Are, you know, Jimmy Olsen, Spider-Man going to shrink? Superman going to shrink to get on this planet? Are they giants? It just leads to so many questions, and it's very evocative. And that's some of the stuff that I really like from Kirby, and just very strange as well. Wow, isn't this the greatest? But it's only the opening wedge to ghoulish occurrences, almost beyond description. Wait till you see the genocide spray. Again, just that concept. Not quite sure what it is. I know what spray is. I know what genocide is. So I'm definitely interested in knowing more about that next issue. Not quite sure what happened here. Something on the printing press, I guess, because that page was saved from it. So just a bit of leaky ink there. And I guess, you know, maybe Kirby figured he hadn't explained things enough with the Mountain of Judgment. I just talked about it. Nice coincidence that we get a little sequence here where he kind of explains more about it and the Harrys that maintain and drive it, right? Everything he does is so toyetic, right? Back in the 70s, still 60s, 70s, there weren't a lot of toys being made from comics or cartoons and stuff. There were laws against that, actually. So you can market toys through movies and cartoons to kids, right? Star Wars was a big hit because it was after the law where they said, well, now you can, right? There's part of that too. Part of Star Wars' success, right? The marketing and the merchandising, especially, is what made George Lucas rich. But yeah, Kirby always created stuff that was very toyetic, or very, you know, toyable, I guess is another way you could say that. Even back when they weren't making toys from his stuff. I don't know if he was consciously thinking of that, or not quite sure. And of course, we've got some more reprints here to justify the shot up in price for these books in 1971. So reprinting some Star Spangled Comics and referring, of course, to the Newsboy Legion and the original Guardian in this issue, maybe is why Kirby's throwing that in there. I'm not quite sure, but, you know, definitely relates to what we're seeing here with the original Newsboy Legion. And again, I don't talk about these much just because it's not kind of the main feature and why we're here. And again, it's more of a marketing thing that DC's doing. It doesn't really relate to Jimmy Olsen specifically. You don't need to read it. And it doesn't relate to the Fourth World as well. So it is fun to see some old school Jack Kirby art. Funny how, man, those circular panels were really kind of a fad there in the late 30s, early 40s, right? Kirby never used them ever again until he did back in the 80s when he was doing, I think it's Hunger Dogs. I probably mentioned this before. Another bit of ink spill there. And I think that's going to be it for this issue. There you go, guys. So that was my review of Superman's Pal, the new Jimmy Olsen issue 142. Guys, if you're still watching the channel and you are still subscribed, thank you so much. I really do appreciate your support. Let me know anything you'd like to, that you want me to respond to in the comments, any questions, any bit of info that you know from stuff I've talked about today, or any questions I've asked that you have the answer to, let me know. If you're watching, guys, but you're not subscribed, please do so below. It only takes a real quick second for you, and it takes it really helps the channel out, helps us grow, and helps get us out there to other people who are into comic books, just like we are. Speaking of comic books, check out my own creator-owned books, Big Baby and STARCRASHER, online at KingComics.CA. Once again, thank you all for watching. Have yourselves an awesome day. King Comics presents Big Baby, Volume 1, Issues 1 to 13, 204 pages of story and art. King Comics also presents STARCRASHER one-shot, 32 pages, cosmic sci-fi surrealist adventure. You can find these fine comics at KingComics.CA, at MaximusRex13 on Instagram, or on Facebook, MaxRex or Big Baby.
Like! Subscribe! Like! Subscribe!